Testing 1, 2. Yes, it is.
Good evening, everybody. This is the Planning and Zoning Commission for June 4th, 2024, starting at 6 p.m. in the City Council Chambers in Smithville, Texas. Notice is hereby given pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, Vernon's Annotated Civil Statute, Article 6252-17, that the City of Smithville will conduct a planning and zoning meeting on June 4th, 2024 at 6 p.m. in the City Council Chambers located at 317 Main Street in Smithville, Texas. 6 o'clock, I'm calling the meeting to order. My name is Caroline Noya. I'm the vice chair for the meeting today. Our chairman had to step away this evening, so I'm going to be conducting the meeting in his absence. My members to the council, to the commission are
Lee Kilgore.
I'm Nancy Catherine.
Monica Paz.
okay. Thank you. We have discussion and action on the approval of the minutes from May 7th, 2024. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes?
I reduced and found no errors. So I make a motion that we approve.
Oh,
I make a motion that we
It's all-
approve the minutes of the May 7th meeting.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Monica, oh, okay. Thank you. Motion passed. Minutes are approved.
Point of order, just as a reminder, people online cannot hear, so please move the microphones a little
Closer.
closer to you. Thank you.
Okay, so this evening we have several items on the agenda. The first item for discussion and action on the right-of-way width variance request for the Woodrose Place subdivision. Property ID 16941, A46 El Lomas, acres 2.505. And there are multiple lots. Since all of the agenda items are for that, I'm not going to require that we repeat it every single time, since all of the items are for the same piece of property. Is that okay with everybody? So you're kind of, we'll just read it once for the record.
Well,
It-
as you're making your motions, you will have to read each
Each
item.
one? Okay.
Yes. Sorry about that.
Okay,
But you can have Mr. Tim Sanders of BEFCO present all of them at once if you like, however you'd like to do it.
okay,
But you do need to read
read each
each
one.
one.
Okay, all right. Well, that being said, Tim, would you like to come up and give us an education, please?
While he is setting up, I will state that if you state the property IDs once, you can refer to the property IDs in aggregate, so you don't have to read all of that. Okay.
That's what I was trying to get at. Thank you.
Okay.
Once again, thank y'all for reaching out to me prior to the meeting. Whenever I come to these, whether it's this one or other stuff, always a guess of what's on people's mind, what may concern them, what may not concern them, and so forth. So when I come, it's kind of a little bit of a guessing game, as far as making sure I present what y'all are looking for. And so having those questions ahead of time and emailing, I kind of brought some documents that were based on the questions that were asked to me to hopefully illustrate the phone conversations and emails that kind of went back and forth and to hopefully answer all y'all's questions. Certainly, if there's other stuff that has popped up, that's more than welcome to try to answer it. But anyway, once again, thank y'all for reaching out prior to the meeting. What I have here, and I have a couple of sketches, and they should all be reflective in the packets I just gave y'all. Some of these are items that y'all have already seen through email. I just printed them off to have. And I kind of wanted to go over a little bit of the history of this project. Actually, I won't go over the full history. Actually, the full history of this project dates back prior to Robert joining the city and so forth. But I'll go back as far as 2020 with this project, as far as what the kind of how we arrived at where we're at today. The first, the aerial, and this aerial isn't in y'all's packet. I just printed this out. It seems like from what I found, aerials are always helpful to point and describe things. But basically what we're looking at doing, and it's reflective on y'all's plat, is everything in yellow here would be proposed residential lots. The two lots adjacent to Loop 230, they're currently zoned as C3, and the plan is to keep that designation. They may develop those residential lots, but the flexibility is they may be commercial lots in the future to basically keep that C3 designation. And all of the rest of the lots, SF1 would be the designation on those. So going through the packet, and I guess this is part of how we arrived. These should be the first 11 by 17 drawings that are in y'all's packet. The top one here, back in July of 2020, we had submitted a preliminary plat to the city for approval of this subdivision. And basically, with this preliminary plat, what we showed was proposed right-of-way coming in on the east end of Loop 230 and then running up straight and then with a cul-de-sac on the end. At that time, in January of that year, we had reached out to TxDOT to figure out, hey, we're going to be tying into y'all's roadway. Where can we, this is what we would like to do. Do y'all see any issues with that? We talked to the assistant area engineer at the Bastrop office. Based on the conversation,
Excuse me, Tim, can you hold a moment? I've got no sound. I got three people trying to watch and there's no sound. So I'm testing microphones. Those in cyberspace, can you hear?
Hello, can you hear?
Yes. It's all on.
I don't know what happened. There's just been three different individuals calling and said we lost sound as soon as Tim said 2020. So it's your fault, Mr. Sanders.
Can you hear me?
Say this one is.
Oh, good.
Maybe
I
that's-
don't know
maybe
what
that's
happened.
why.
There's just been three different individuals calling and said we lost sound as soon as Tim said 2020. Mr. Sanders.
Testing.
Maybe you're gonna have to eat the mic.
Okay.
Get in there.
So back to the first, the illustration I showed with the 52-foot right of way with the 30-foot, 1 foot, and one diagram at the top. I showed a 5-foot sidewalk on each side, and then the second one right below that was a 5-foot sidewalk on one side. The reason it's like that, if you look at how the roadway is going in here, basically the owners control the land on both sides of the right of way until you get to this point. And then once you get to this point and go north, basically the stuff on the east side of the right of way, the owner doesn't control. That would be another individual. And so the top section, basically we would have sidewalks on both sides of the street until you get to this point. But then once you get to this point going north, you would just have the sidewalks. So you would have it just on the west side and so forth. And that's the reason for the two sections. The next exhibit that I provided for you guys, I know there were some questions as far as where the utilities would be located. And so I tend to color things a lot to make things stand out. And y'all should have this diagram in y'all's packet. What we have here with the pink highlighted lines, that's where the proposed 52-foot right-of-way is what we show on the plat. And the green and the blue lines, the blue line would be the proposed water line, and the green line would be the proposed sewer wastewater line. And both the water and the wastewater fall within the 52-foot right of way, except for in this area here where there would be a dedicated PUE in order to get to Loop 230. That's the only area where it doesn't. Because I think there were some questions on, where those utilities would fall as far as within the 52-foot right of way or the 8-foot PUE. The way we have it all laid out is the sewer line would run basically along the east side of the right of way within that extra 10.5 feet. And remember, we don't have a sidewalk on that side. So it'd basically be centered up within that 10.5 feet extra. And then the water line would fall just outside the edge of the sidewalk itself, but within that 52-foot right of way. With as going back to the top diagram, basically you have about 5.5 feet there from the edge of sidewalk to the edge of right of way. And so your water line would fit right in there and your wastewater line would fit over here. And then again, we have that 8-foot PUE also. Is there any questions regarding the right of way or the kind of the layout of the improvements?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Normal design would have, if you're looking at the very top and it
Mhm.
was a complete 60-foot right away, your water would be where in that top diagram?
In that it would still be within the right of way. It would be just off the edge of sidewalk. So if there was a 60-foot right of way, typically what you would do is put where the 52-foot is, you'd have an additional 4 foot here and an additional 4 foot there is normally how
Okay.
you'd see that.
Thank you.
Going to the other variances, I guess before I get into the setback variances, I'll go to the variance related to the diameter of the cul-de-sac. What we're requesting is a 60-foot radius to the edge of right-of-way line and a 48-foot radius to the face of curb. And basically, and I think this was in one of the emails, I'd sent some information showing what fire code requires is a minimum 48 feet, which is what we're matching. And I think I'd also included in the email just to kind of have a perspective on, what is a 48 foot? What does that look like, and so forth. Two examples here in town where that variance has been requested and previously approved. Most recently on the Prairie subdivision, that has a 48-foot to face of curb. And then on Herta River Estates also, that has a 48-foot to the face of curb. The other one I had mentioned, and this was a lot older subdivision. I think River Chase was done with the 90s, mid to late 90s, Robert, in that radius of that cul-de-sac is actually smaller than 48. I think it was 40 or 45 something. So, we're bigger than that, but we're matching up with what's been previously approved and still meets fire code on there. Regarding the setback variances that we're requesting, the primary reason for the setback variances is to have more buildable area as far as how you configure your house. And I guess the best way to and I'm going to use a simple analogy here. If this was your buildable area, you could only do so and so much with your configuration of your house. Now, if this whole sheet was your buildable area, you would be able to have a lot more options on your layout with where your house is and garage because you have more space to work at. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going with a bigger house or so forth. It just means you have a bigger space to work in to configure it. In a sense, having a more custom type home and so forth, a more unique style home. And so that's the primary reason for the setback variances is basically have a buildable area to where you can adjust the layout of how you want to do your home garage. Yes, ma'am.
These are larger lots.
Yes, ma'am. And I think, sure. We've talked about, let's see, of course, the block length. We only have one access point here, which is loop 230. Based on, and let me pull up the aerial again to further illustrate. Based on the history of this, from what we've seen, it's probably unlikely that this road would ever tie into any other roads. If the plat is approved, then basically, in order to go through the north, you'd have to be dealing with multiple property owners in order to extend that roadway. Similarly, here with the recently subdivision over here, there's a detention pond here, so it would never be able to go in that direction. Of course, the city has a detention pond over here on the west side. The only area that it possibly could be extended would be over here into the Smithville Housing Authority property. I do know that the owners have reached out to them in the past at various times about the possibility of there could be reach an agreement about acquiring some land or so forth. But from what I understand, there was never an agreement reached. So make a long story short, more than likely the road would never be extended. The only place it possibly could get extended would be over into this area. The reason I bring that up is with it not being able to extend, really, it's you'll have a fairly low amount of traffic and so forth. This will be a local street, and with not having a lot of traffic, where I'm going with that, the likelihood of it ever becoming a major thoroughfare for traveling probably wouldn't happen and so forth. And so that was the reason I pointed that out with the length and so forth, or why we're requesting the length from what the city ordinance has. And I think, Robert, did I cover all the Mayor Tracy, the variances, we talked about setbacks, cul-de-sacs, the right-of-way width. Yeah. Block width. I haven't talked about width. I know that was something Robert and I think maybe we might have filled out the application wrong and so forth. I think Robert, from what you indicated, there was we didn't need to request a variance because there was no intersection. Is that correct? That I guess what we should have checked on there was NA instead of a variance request on there. So I apologize for that. So in that. But that's kind of the history of this project. Again, this project was initially started I think 2011, 2012, somewhere in there. At that time, the plan was to develop a full subdivision where the city detention pond was, this track, and just for various reasons, it just didn't work out quite at the time. And so things have kind of evolved over time, and that's where we're at today and so forth. But I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you guys may have.
The only thing that I wanted to say for the people in cyber land, in the original plan and this plan, you've lost one lot. It was 17 lots and now it's 16 lots because they're changing the roadway.
Oh, correct. Yes.
So just
That-
people,
That is correct. Yes.
do any of you other members have questions?
I do. So you referenced the August 2020 meeting at which most of these variances were already approved. They went through city council, they were approved there. So I looked at today's agenda with the variance requests as well as the August 2021.
Yeah.
And most of them look like the same, but it does look like a few things are different.
I think the one thing in the block length and block width at that point, I think that was something that's probably become more prominent in the last couple of years and so forth. I guess we probably should have requested a variance then, but didn't know any better. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay, so really most of these, other than the block length and block width,
that is correct.
have already been through P and Z, through council.
Correct.
We've approved them before on the prairie. All right, thank you.
Sure.
Oh, sorry, one more for Robert. Do you see anything problematic from the perspective of, the fire department or city maintenance crews being able to work on utilities here?
We do not.
Oh, I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I know that lot 4
Yes.
goes into the drainage, is the drainage. Can you address that just shortly
Sure.
for
Yes,
anyone that might be interested?
Sure.
Thank you.
So what I have, I'm glad you brought that up. I brought some exhibits because there was one question on drainage as far as how we were addressing that. What we have here at the top and at the bottom, these are two sheets that were from the approved construction plan set that had the third-party review. The top part is basically the pre-development conditions of how they exist today, minus the Family Dollar, of course. But basically what you had, this heavy dotted line, that was the area that was all draining into the detention pond. And then at the bottom here, this is post-development conditions. The reason you see multiple lines is there's different calculations going into as far as impervious cover and so forth, how we rate it. But basically everything that has a heavy dotted line around there, this would all be going into the detention pond. So what we did as part of our calculations is we determined or using formulas calculated what the amount of existing runoff would be going into the detention pond today based on the 100-year event. Then what we did was assuming full development using residential lots, commercial on these two lots up here, we calculated what the total volume would then be going into the detention pond based on post-development conditions. So what we did then is we took the total volume post-development, subtracted out the pre-development volume, and that difference is the volume that we would be adding to the pond. So in other words, it would negate any impervious cover. In other words, with full development and adding this to the detention pond, it would be reflective of what exists today.
I have a question. The variance, zoning and variance request from August of 20, item number 5, to allow construction of sidewalks to occur during construction of residential commercial buildings on lots instead of during construction and public infrastructure, i.e. the streets and public utilities. That is not seen on these
Right.
variance requests.
We didn't request that this time.
So it's a
so
non-issue?
The plan, well, with me this morning are the Moits and one of the co-owners, and I forgot to mention George. He would have been here also this evening, but he's on vacation. He will be at the council meeting next week. But as far Mr. Moit, he'll be constructing all of the improvements and so forth. And basically the way we had it laid out is the sidewalks would be constructed right after the streets are constructed, unless that's an issue.
We'll probably put the sidewalks in after the houses.
Okay. Yeah, so we didn't request that variance this
Okay,
time.
but then we can do, us, traffic can jump in the curb,
Right.
break the sidewalk, whatever's best, we'll do it either way.
Okay.
Okay. I also have a question about the right of way and just wanting to understand, can you explain the rationale behind requesting a right of way variance from 60 feet to 52 feet, as well as the front yard setback?
So with the variance request to the 52 feet, and I'll bring up this diagram here. Utilizing the dimensions that we shown here, with having the 52-foot variant or 52-foot right-of-way variance, basically the front property line would begin at this line right here. The reason that that's important is basically we're requesting a 20-foot front setback instead of a 25. So where that 20-foot would start then would be from this area right here going back into the lot. So where the 8-foot variance, what that gets you is basically you have 8 foot of more buildable area on your lot. If it was 60 foot going here, for instance, to your public right of way, then that's where the 20-foot variance request would start. And so basically the purpose of the request is you get an additional 8 foot of front buildable area, as well as in the 5-foot setbacks, you get another 5 foot. So essentially you're adding 13 foot of buildable area on your lot with the variances we're requesting. If you didn't have those, you would lose 13 foot. Oh, sure.
Yeah, what we did on M5 is, I'm Adam Moy, by the way. What we did on M5 is we did a 42-foot right of way and gave the city a 15-foot PUE to the side, which was actually 67 feet, which is more than, so I mean, this would be, it's still 60. This is 60. It's the same thing. It just helps out with, you can tax that area with the owners owning it as far as real estate goes versus the city having an easement there. So it's just more money in taxes. Yeah. And it helps out with us having room to build a house.
And the fire trucks and all can get in there, garbage trucks can get in there and turn
Absolutely.
around.
Absolutely.
Thank you. My next question is about the 5-foot setback on either side,
Yes.
side yard setbacks. Can you explain the rationale behind that? Because what I'm thinking is it's 7.5 feet now, you're
Mhm.
going to 5, you're coming forward 5 feet, actually 13 feet.
Sure.
So your lot sizes average 7,000 square feet. You've got at least 56 feet. Well, I think number 14 only has 44 feet.
Yeah.
But you do have quite a large lot without granting the variances.
Mhm.
So what's the rationale behind
just to have more buildable area, but based on, in talking with George, just to give you a little bit of background on his, George lives originally from Smithville, but lives in Lubbock and has done a lot of development up there and so forth. And what George has found over time is the more buildable area here, the more, as he told me, you can build a nicer house and so forth because you have more room to work in. And that was the purpose of the request, was basically is have as much room to work with within reason, of course. And I know there was one question as far as, is the owner planning 1-story, 2-story houses? And what Mr. Moyd has told me is they are planning just 1-story houses, no 2-story houses on that. And I believe minimum 1,500 square feet. Is that correct?
So you're still not going to cover more than 40% of impervious space?
Yeah,
Okay,
the
that's-
percent
it's
impervious would
just-
not change.
It's
Yeah,
just placing the house somewhere in the lot to have like a bigger backyard, a shorter front
correct,
yard.
correct. Yeah.
Is there anyone signed up to speak?
Do have Mr. Manford Hill that signed up generally to speak. Is item number 3 something you want to speak on, sir? Okay.
Thank you, Tim.
I hope you guys forgive me for not knowing everything I need to know. But I'm learning as I go, and
So are we.
This is all kind of new to me. My initial concern was on the width of the street, and I'm thinking tiny homes, not gonna have a big 2-car garage. Somebody's gonna be parking all up and down the street, possibly parking on both sides of the street. So not knowing what the city requires minimum street width, is 50 feet gonna be enough if you have cars parked on both sides? If not, would the city put signs up on one side, no parking on this side? That was one of my concerns. This may not be the exact moment for my other concern. How are they gonna drain into the holding pond? Is it gonna be by pipe or conduit, or are they gonna put drains in under the sidewalk?
That would be Tim question.
Okay.
Tim, you can address him when he finishes. Thank you.
The other thing I was wondering about would be lot elevation above the street. The little blueprint that I got in the mail doesn't really talk too much about elevation changes. Is that gonna be maintained 1.5 feet above the street, which I believe is what the city calls for? Above the pavement? And fire hydrants, are they gonna be available? Are they gonna be installed either somewhere along the line? And those were my concerns. The little lots, I'm not gonna get in anybody's way and go against that. That's really all I got to say. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Tim, can you address his concerns, please?
Starting on the street width. The street width that we're planning is a 31-foot back of curb to back of curb, and that would be the same as what's currently constructed in the Prairie subdivision in Herder River Estates. So the street width itself is staying the same as what you have other ways. It's just the extra width beyond the back of curb that we're requesting a variance to. So that was just, so you wouldn't see with this street width, if you drove down this street and drove down other streets, you would know the difference. It would be the same street width. As far as drainage, we're draining into the detention pond. It's a combination, some by underground storm sewer, and then some we're going to be draining through lot 4, where it'll go into like a concrete flume and drain to the bottom of the detention pond. The reason we have multiple entries, it's super flat out there, and with grading, one of the city ordinances that one of the ordinance that the city has is you have to maintain a minimum of 0.5% grade on your roadway. With as flat as this is, we're not able to do a 0.5% grade from one end to the other. Basically, what we had to do is seesaw the road and so forth. Now it's so flat that you won't notice the seesaw when you're driving, but basically what it means is the street goes down, then it goes up, then it goes down, and then it goes up. And so that's how the drainage works. So in some of the low areas, we have a storm sewer pipe that's going to be going down a side lot line that'll drain into the pond. In those areas, actually the side setback will be wider than 5 feet. I think we had on there in the drainage plans a minimum of a 15-foot drainage easement. So in those areas, you would have a 7.5-foot setback on there in those areas. But then we do have, looking on the screen there, lot 4, that we have it draining down into the street, basically a curb cut where it would drop into the detention pond. So basically, a drainage it's a combination of storm sewer and storm inlets, as well as overland flow into the pond. On the fire hydrants, we do have fire hydrants planned. There's actually one that was recently constructed with the Family Dollar, if I remember right. That one went in, Robert, correct? There's also another fire hydrant here in the middle. I think, yeah, that we had 2 fire hydrants. So one up here, and then I think there's an existing one also on Loop 230 in front of the house. So you'll have three different fire hydrants to serve the subdivision, and it all meets the spacing the city spacing requirements, which I think is 500 feet, if I remember correctly.
I have another question. Sorry,
No, go ahead. Then.
going back to the setbacks.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so lot 1, 2, and 3. You've
Yes.
got 69.13, 63.36, and 65.86 in terms of width. The other lots along Myrtle Lane are 54 feet width-wise, 56, et cetera. And then you get to lot 11. I don't know why it says 41 because it looks approximately the same.
Oh, what that is, that
That's
41,
a
that
fi-
41, the reason it's like that, there's an additional distance where that L3 is, there's a distance there. So basically, I think there's a turn in the boundary line, and that's why it's denoted separately. So the actual width is greater than 41 feet.
At about 56, so they're all equally.
More
So
or less, yes, ma'am.
is there a reason why lot 1, 2, and 3 with their larger widths need the 5-foot setback and could not hit the 7.5?
On those lots, I know part of the reason why we structured, for instance, I'll show lots 1 and 2. The city has a main electrical line that's going through there. If you look in the middle of the circle where that E is, that's an electrical line. And so what we tried to do there is align that line with the side lot line. So between 1 and 2, with having it, we wanted to center it up as much as we could with that electric to stay in the same alignment, and the lot width, for lack of a better word, just kind of worked out that way, and that was part of the reason why we did it that way.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay.
I wanted to say thank you, sir. Some of those were really good questions. And as far as the small lots go, most of these are larger than the smaller lots we have in town. We have quite a few lots that are 0.154 acres. And for the most part, these are larger than those. So they're not huge, but they are pretty reasonable for other lots in Smithville. So I wanted to give you some reassurance there.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody? No. Okay. All right. Well, with all that being said, thank you very much. And we will now, sorry about that, folks, address the, these issues. For the first one, do I have a motion?
Actually, can I ask a question of the committee?
Mhm.
Since we're about to vote on each of these separately, are there any in particular that any of you find objectionable? Or could we do them all at once? I know we have to read each and every friggin' one of them, but can we just do it once and then we only have to read the approval motion once?
It's fine with me.
It's fine with me. Yes, ma'am.
Uh-oh.
I would like just to point out, items number 4 and items number 5 are actually zoning. So as far as their setbacks, that's to a zoning. The rest of the numbers, so 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, are gonna be for the subdivision itself. So if 4 and 5 don't pass, it doesn't affect the plat, if that makes sense to you.
So 4 and 5 with
4 and 5 are just, they are zoning variance requests and not necessarily the subdivision. I'm learning the subdivision variances. So
Okay, so would it be best if we separated 4 and 5 from the remainder of them?
that's gonna be on you how, I mean, you have to discuss everything that's on the agenda. As far as the order goes, we just have to state that we're gonna be going in a different order than what's stated on the agenda, correct?
With all the things that are tied to denial or approval in the variance request, meets the 5 criteria, you're gonna have to do each one of them. You, as we talked about, if you initially just list out the lot numbers and plats once, you can then go to like item 4, discussion action on a front yard setback request for the parcels and lots previously requested. So that'll save you some time, but you got to do it.
We gotta read this every single time.
Yeah.
Okay. Well then, Lee,
For our general counsel's advice.
go for it.
I move to approve. Nope. I move to recommend approval to council for variance number 1, right of way with variance request for, no, wait, I'm not saying that right. Hold on. 52-foot right of way and adjoining 8-foot public utility easement in lieu of a 60-foot right of way for Woodrose Place subdivision, property ID 16941, A46 L Lomas Acres 2.505. What are these little things? Lots, lot 8717862, 8717861, 8717760, 8717859, 16566, and 871858. I missed it. 8717858. McMahon Addition lots 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Property owners George McMahon and 230 Properties LLC, agent Bevco Engineering, Tim Sanders. Because, with the following findings. The variance will not be contrary to the public interest, and there are special conditions affecting the applicant's property. And because of the special conditions, literal enforcement of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship, and the variance observes the spirit of the ordinance, and substantial justice is done by granting the variance.
Have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None, any opposed? None. Passes unanimously. On the second one,
So on the,
Item number 4.
So on
Oh,
item 4.
nope, you
I'm
got-
sorry, I'm just asking a
Oh,
question. Robert, question.
You got to talk.
So for-
what are we omitting? Out of that sentence, what do we get to omit? The lots previously listed in, okay, I'll go with number 2
Thank
also.
you. Thank you.
I move to recommend approval to council for a 20-foot front building setback for lots 1 and 3 and lots 5 through 14 in lieu of 25 feet. 1 through 3 and lots 4 through 15. 5 through 15, sorry. Should I start over?
Lots 1, 2, and 3. 4 through 3, and lots 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Okay. I'm starting over. I move to recommend approval to council for a variance, 20-foot front building setback for lots 1, 2, and 3, and lots 5 through 14 in lieu of 25 feet. Of Woodrose Place subdivision, property ID 16941, A46, L Lomas, acres 2.505 for the previously lots approved in variance number 1. Property owners George McMahon and 230 Properties LLC, agent Bethel Engineering, Tim Sanders, with the following findings. The variance will not be contrary to public interest, and there are special conditions affecting the applicant's property, and because of the special conditions, literal enforcement of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship, and the variance observes the spirit of the ordinance, and substantial justice is done by granting the variance.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Have, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, none opposed. Passes unanimously. You want to go for number 3?
I move to recommend approval to council for a variance of a 5-foot side building setback for lots 1 through 3 and lots 4 through 14 in lieu of 7.5. I have to say that? Okay, for lots 1, 2, and 3, lots 4 through 14. 5 through 14. With the, no, hang on, where are we? Of Woodrose Place subdivision property 16941, A46, L Lomas, acres 2.505 for the previous lots approved in variance number 1 and 2. Property owners, George McMahon and 230 Properties LLC, agent Bevco Engineering, Tim Sanders. Based on the following findings. The variance will not be contrary to the public interest, and there are special conditions affecting the applicant's property. And because of the special conditions, literal enforcement of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship, and the variance observes the spirit of the ordinance, and substantial justice is done by granting the variance.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Are you in favor?
Yes,
Any opposed? None. Passes unanimously.
Madam Chairman, point of order. We've already established the property descriptions, lot numbers, just say the Woodrose Place subdivision. Would that be helpful?
Would be very helpful. Thank you very much. Okay, next item, number 6. Do I have a motion?
I move to recommend approval to council for a variance to allow 48-foot radius of face of curb and 60-foot radius to property line at cul-de-sac in lieu of 60 feet and 70 feet respectfully for the Woodrose Place subdivision, property ID 16941.
Do I have a second?
Oh, wait, because with the following findings. The variance will not be contrary to the public interest and there are special conditions affecting the applicant's property. And because of the special conditions, literal enforcement of the ordinance will result in unnecessary hardship. And the variance observes the spirit of the ordinance and substantial justice is done by granting the variance.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Passes unanimously. Number 7.
I move to recommend approval to council for a variance.
Same thing. Same thing. Number 7 is actually the same as number 6. It's the same.
It's okay, just go with number 7.
A variance to allow 48-foot radius to face.
First one was the radius base curve cul-de-sac. This is discussion.
Minimum.
Minimum radius of property line at cul-de-sac.
And I included it in number 6, right?
So we approved both of them then?
I would still make a motion on number 7. I would still just do it.
Okay. Okay. I move to recommend approval to council for a variance on a minimum radius to property line at cul-de-sac variance request at Woodrose subdivision, property ID 16941. Because with the following findings, the variance will not be contrary to the public interest. There are special circumstances affecting the applicant's property, and because the special conditions, literal enforcement of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship, and the variance observes the spirit of the ordinance, and substantial justice is done by granting the variance.
Second. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Item number 8. Do I have a motion? Allow.
I move to recommend approval to council for a variance to allow a cul-de-sac longer than 400 feet for Woodrose Place subdivision, property ID 16941, with the following findings. The variance will not be contrary to public interest and there are special conditions affecting the applicant's property. And because the special conditions, literal enforcement of the ordinance will result in unnecessary hardship, and the variance observes the spirit of the ordinance and substantial justice is done by granting the variance.
Second.
Thank you.
Catherine, second.
Nancy. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Next.
Number
Oh,
9.
that was number 8. This is number 9.
Number 9, go ahead.
Block link. I move to recommend approval to council for a variance of a block length greater than 600 feet and block width less than 240 feet All right, I amend my motion. I move to approve to council for a variance of a block length greater than 600 feet for Woodrose Place subdivision, property ID 16941, with the following findings. The variance will not be contrary to the public interest and there are special conditions affecting the applicant's property. And because the special conditions, literal enforcement of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship, and the variance observes the spirit of the ordinance and substantial justice is done by granting the variance.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. It passes unanimously.
Item number 10 will be pulled as it is not needing to be requested.
Not applicable, yes. Okay. Okay. Item number 11. Do I have a motion for number 11?
I move to recommend approval to council to approve the preliminary plat for Woodrose Place subdivision property ID 16941,
Read all of them on the plat because.
A46L Lomas Acres 2.505, 8717862, 8717861, 8717860, 8717859, 16566, and 8717858. McMahon Addition lots 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Property owners George McMahon and 230 Properties LLC, agent Bevco Engineering, Tim Sanders, with the following fine.
Do I have a second?
Oh,
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, passes unanimously. Any further business to be discussed? None, hearing none. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, Lee.